everyone, welcome to another episode of the podcast Mindset for Mars. I'm Sorana Pascario. I'm your host. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to catch our weekly episode. Hit the subscribe button and you're gonna get notified every Wednesday when we post cool new stuff. And today's episode is going to be about big scary goals. I think there's a official name for them, like stretch goals, but I prefer the more childish name, big scary goals, because I think it's very illustrative to what they really are. They're big and they're scary, and that's the whole point of setting them, for them to be big and scary. I'm gonna go into it in a second. I actually want to start by telling you my personal story with big scary goals, and I'm going to analyze on this example as we go along. So about 3.5 years ago, if you follow me, you've heard the story before, I had a sort of miraculous healing from depression, PTSD, through meditation. And it was completely paradigm changing. I was like, well, if that's possible, what else is possible? And I decided I was going to literally dedicate my life to not only learning about the human psyche, but also sharing my message. So at that point, I deeply admired authors and speakers because there were lots of motivational speakers and authors who had basically helped me through my process, through my journey, and they were essentially my mentors, even though I'd never met them. So that's who I wanted to become. I wanted to become somebody who could write that caliber book, and who could be an international speaker. And at that point, I had never written a book, and also I wasn't a very good speaker. And also I was living in Romania at the time. And because I wasn't connected to an international environment in that particular moment of my life, it also seemed even further away. It seemed like even harder, because I was like, who am I? There's somewhat of an imposter syndrome going on. Like, who am I to even attempt to do this? English is not my first language. I wanted to write and speak in English. And not that my English was poor, but there was that little added extra doubt. It's so easy for imposter syndrome to set in, even if you have all the qualifications. And there were so many little things that were just adding up. But I decided, and also the fact that I had just had this extraordinary healing from something that I'd been told by doctors is possible, might never heal, and I might have to be on medication for the rest of my life. And not only was I not on medication, was I fully healed, but everything about me was transformed, about my energy. I was completely symptom free. So I was like, well, if I could do that, then why not this? So I set about becoming the person who could write the book, who could be the speaker. And this is one of the key points about big scary goals, about stretch goals, is that they differ from regular goals in the fact that you have no idea how you're going to accomplish them. You are not yet the person who can accomplish these goals. You don't have the skills, you don't necessarily have the resources, you don't have the knowledge. There's a lot of stuff that you don't know about how you're going to accomplish it. You can't really make a plan because it's mostly unknowns. So you're gonna ask me, okay, so what do you have? Well, you have your drive, you have your commitment, you have your unrelenting desire to get this done. And that is very much an energetic propellant. It's like energetic fuel that will help you on your journey. And also another element that I think is key is that you have faith that somehow by setting this intention and putting all of your energy behind this goal, life, the universe, I talk about the universe a lot, and it can sound like a bit of a woo-woo term, but really it isn't. It's this cosmic energy that created us. Having faith that this energy that creates is going to create opportunities, that life will show up for you if you show up for these goals, and help you accomplish them. And I think this is probably the most important part of it. And of course, it's that leap of faith can be very scary because you have no idea how, because a lot of people who want to invest in you or who want to support you, or your mother, your father, your friends, people who are very rational within your circle of professional acquaintances might tell you, you don't have a plan. I don't really see how this is going to happen. That actually was my case. There were people who told me, I don't really see a plan of how you're going to get this done. Like, you don't really have the experience, you don't really know any. And I literally don't see a plan, because the truth is I didn't exactly have a plan. I had more of a dream and a goal. But what I started doing was training myself to become the person who could accomplish that. So in terms of writing a book, I did this crazy research. I already talked about how I read 300 books within a year and a half. It was like a marathon of just reading books and reading the kind of books that I wanted to be able to ultimately write, and kind of just cramming information into my head, and also getting accustomed to the phrasing, the type of phrasing that I really liked. Sometimes, reading over and over again phrases that I loved from writers that I really admired. And with speaking, I literally started reverse engineering TED Talks and speeches that I loved. I read every single book about public speaking that I could find. And every opportunity that I had to speak, I would take it. And, 3.5 years later, I'm 2 weeks away from submitting my manuscript for the very book that I didn't know if I could write. And I have an amazing publisher. They're called Scribe Media. They're in Austin, Texas, and they're absolute geniuses. I'm so excited to be working with them. And I feel completely safe submitting my manuscript to my editing team. I have an editing team. I mean, how cool is that? And knowing that on the other side, a great book will come out, because they will not let me publish a shit one. Thank God for that. And with speaking, I recently, last year I did a TED Talk that you can watch. It's about happiness. And a couple of months ago, I was featured on a show called Speak Up. It's a show about public speaking, and it's on Amazon Prime Video. So I think that pretty much ticks the boxes of international speaker. Of course, this is just the beginning of my journey, because now that I've tasted what it feels like to be on stage and speak in front of audiences, I caught the bug, so I'm never letting it go. But what I'm trying to say is that the goals that I set for myself, you can consider them accomplished. And what I can tell you is that they completely transformed me. They completely transformed my life. And within the last 3.5 years, I pushed myself so hard. to learn, to become, to transform, that I'm completely unrecognizable. And my life, the way my life looks, has completely transformed as well. And that's why I'm saying that, and you only need that idea, that drive, that commitment, that energy, and it will transform your life completely. Because in the process of doing that, you go step by step by step by step, tiny little steps of becoming, of putting yourself out of the comfort zone. Because you're constantly, when you're pursuing a goal like that, you are literally out of your comfort zone every single day, because every single day you try to push yourself harder and farther in order to just get one little step closer to your goal. So, it's incremental steps, but at some point, because it compounds, you look behind at, the person you were a year ago, and you're like, wow, I can't believe how much I've grown. Because every single day of being just a little bit closer to your goal makes a whole lot of a difference when it really adds up. And I want to make a note about why these types of things are so addictive, because setting goals like this is addictive. And actually this podcast that I'm speaking on right now is basically my next big goal, which is I want to coach astronauts, even bigger and crazier than the previous one. I'm addicted to it, and it's because it really stimulates your dopamine. Dopamine is that feel good chemical in our systems that is associated with reward. And there's a lot of drugs that stimulate your dopamine. Your phone, social media and all the notifications are actually stimulating your dopamine. That's why they're so addictive, and that's why we can't get enough of them, and we can't just stop scrolling and put the phone away. And it's the same with these goals. Now, it's not to say that these things are similar, or that they're the same in terms of, oh, it's dopamine, must be bad for you. No, dopamine is there for a reason. It's a very important chemical that helps you feel good when you're accomplishing something, so that you keep progressing and you keep growing. And they can be extremely addictive, and they make you feel good, and they can keep you sane in times when everything around you seems dark, when your personal life might not be going so well, when there's a host of things, when things are hard. That's why it's even if things are really hard, you can get very, very addicted to your goal, and that will actually help you to push through. There's an amazing author who is one of those mentors I mentioned that I never met. His name is Viktor Frankl, and I talk about him a lot in my podcast because he's one of the most impactful authors I've ever read. And he has a book called Man's Search for Meaning. He was a doctor who ended up in Auschwitz, and he lost his entire family there. He's the only person who survived out of his entire family, and he got out of Auschwitz, and he wrote this book, Man's Search for Meaning. And basically what he says in it is that the one thing that made the difference between people who lived and people who died in concentration camps was whether or not they had a purpose. So, it could be anything. It could be, I want to see my child, have a child who needs me, so I have to survive for them. I have this book that I want to finish. I want to survive so I can finish this book and give it to the world. That is how big purpose, that kind of purpose, that's how important it is. And that's, the power that it has is to literally keep you alive when the circumstances are life and death, and mostly death, because so many people perished in concentration camps because they were designed for death, and still people survived. And so these goals have the capacity to keep you sane, to keep you on track, to keep you motivated, to keep you energized through very tough times in your life, which is also why they're so phenomenal and addictive. A word of caution is that there's a lot of messages out there that the only thing that happiness doesn't really exist, or don't chase happiness. The only thing that matters in your life is purpose. I actually don't fully agree with that. I obviously talking about this, and I think it's a very, very important part of happiness. But I think of happiness as an ecosystem that includes purpose, but is not just purpose. You can watch my TED Talk. It's called what I learned, what rock bottom taught me about happiness. God, I forgot the name of my TED Talk. Well, anyways, so you can watch that if you want to hear more about my views on happiness and how it's actually an ecosystem and it's not just one thing. So the danger with these big goals is that they can completely take over your life. And because they keep you sane and they can keep you motivated when everything around you is collapsing, you might not even notice that your life is devoid of anything else, that you don't have healthy relationships, that your health is that you're not looking after your health, that that there's a lot of other things in your life that you're not really building in a healthy way. So that's as a word of caution. Don't get completely lost in this, that you lose track of anything else. Do pay attention to the rest of your life as well. This is not meant to be a replacement for life. Life is for living, life is for relationships, for human connection. But having a goal that you can integrate into your life, having this kind of big scary goal, is absolutely phenomenal. For me at this point, I already told you, and this podcast is living proof of that. I want to become an astronaut coach. Train astronauts who are going to live in space. So going to experience completely new situations and very, very difficult psychological challenges. And I have other big goals. I actually want to create a TV show about this, about my journey of becoming. And it's exactly that. It's the journey of becoming that I think is the most interesting part. And I think that is actually why, that's what I would love to make a show about. It's the becoming, it's the transformation, it's the personal journey from, this is just an idea that I have, to it became a goal, and I'm completely committed to it, to wow, I'm achieving it. And, you might never achieve it. That's something that you should consider. It is possible that it's so big that you will never achieve it. Maybe I will never coach astronauts. Maybe Elon Musk will never take people to Mars. But ultimately, when something is absolutely huge, it doesn't really matter, because you will transform so much through this journey. It might take you into places that you never would have gone otherwise. It will allow you to do other things that you would have never been able to do had you not stretched yourself, had you not pushed yourself to become that person. So ultimately, there's no penalty for deciding to do something and then not actually accomplishing it. Who cares? Okay, if you're scared that you told people you're going to do this and you never do it, I would rather look at why it's so important for you to get that validation. Of course, we all need validation, but we can do away with the opinions of others about whether we accomplished something or not, and actually look at what failing brought us, because failure is the most important one of the most important lessons of life. And it's not failure if you learned, it's not failure if you transformed. And this is, the gifts of setting a goal like this are so big that it will absolutely not matter at the end. Another thing about setting the goals and talking about them, I actually mentioned that sometimes, if you tell people your big goals and you don't have a plan, then some of them will be like, well, I don't see how that's going to happen. I think it's a very important filter, and I actually learned this from an amazing woman, Nicole Gibson. I met her at Mind Valley. She was on stage and absolutely mesmerizing as a speaker. And I took one of her courses. She leads an organization called Love Out Loud, and in her course she was saying, when I went from saying I'm passionate about mental health to saying I want to impact 200 million people within the next 2 years through a message of love, the caliber of investors, the caliber of people who wanted to back me, the caliber of people who were interested in even just talking to me shifted. There was an up-leveling, because it's an amazing filter. They're having the guts to talk about dreams like that, goals like that, will attract people who are interested in that kind of madness, let's call it, in that kind of courage, looking stupid in front of others. Just talking about the fact that you have a big dream, and not like having the guts to go after it, even if it's huge and scary, will filter out the people who think, oh, that's never gonna happen, I think you look stupid, whatever. And it's going to attract the people who think like you, the people who admire that kind of courage and that kind of madness. Again, because it can seem madness from the outside if you're going after something that's never been done before, right? But it is also life-changing when you start talking about it. And that actually happened to me as well when I started talking about, because writing a book and becoming a speaker, it was a big goal for me at that time, because I had never attempted something like this. And also I hadn't really, I'd failed a lot. I'd had 2 tech companies that failed miserably. I'd failed at a lot of things. So I didn't have the knowledge about myself that I could achieve something. Now, having achieved what 3.5 years ago was a big goal for me, I have a lot more faith in my capacity to achieve. So I'm capable to set even more daring goals, something way crazier. So when I started talking about my desire to become the astronaut coach, a lot of people looked at me funny, and people laughed at me, and people thought, oh yeah, whatever, you're crazy. But the people who mattered, they saw me and they told me, that's absolutely amazing, we love it. And people started supporting me, and it was actually I was in a meeting with now dear friend JB Owen last year. I think it was June of 2020 when we talked, or May or something, and I actually had the guts to talk about this dream for the very first time, and she told me it's absolutely amazing. And then she became my coach. We were going to do a project together. That project is now on hold. We'll see what happens. But even if that project didn't happen or isn't going to happen, the fact that I decided I was going to go for it, the fact that I decided, I'm going to become this person, and I set it in motion, completely up-leveled me. And I started researching, and I started, I decided I was going to create this podcast, and I started talking to people in the industry. And suddenly the conversations I'm having, the connections I have, the opportunities to speak, the people that I have access to is beyond anything I ever expected. And the people whose attention my project attracts is, again, at a very different caliber from anything that I could have possibly imagined. So, this is my story about big scary goals. And don't be afraid to dream as big as possible. I mean, honestly, we live in an unprecedented world. It is such a safe environment for experimentation. It is such a potential rich world where there's technology to accomplish pretty much anything, where the barriers to connect to people who can help you with projects, to collaborate, are so low. Literally, there's nothing stopping you. There's so much money floating around that is just waiting to find the right projects. There are so many people who want to collaborate on big dreams. I mean, it's literally the most extraordinary time in the history of humanity from this perspective. There has never been a time like this. And it's a very safe environment, probably 1,000 years ago or even 200 years ago, if you failed, you might have had your head cut off. That's also why our fear of failure is so huge, because there were real consequences. The possibility of you dying because you failed to feed your family, or because somebody actually punished you and killed you, those were real. Nowadays, you have virtual safety nets. Like, nothing bad will really happen to you. Of course, there's the opportunity cost of having to work towards something to pay your bills, but there's always ways around it if you really want to make it happen. And really go for it. I mean, I personally, after having been through everything that I've been through, after having healed from feeling like death every day, I promised myself, I'm gonna go after everything that I dream of. And it's an amazing journey. I mean, I look at myself 3.5 years ago, and I cannot believe just how much I've changed, how much I've grown, how many opportunities, how many incredible moments in my life of just experiencing things, just meeting amazing people who inspired me, who taught me. Even if only 10% of my crazy dreams come true, what a journey. I'm just in awe of the world we live in and how many incredible people there are. So really go after it. I mean, just go, just live, just go for it. Promise yourself that you're going to accomplish, to try to accomplish everything that you dream of, and see what happens, because it might not be what you actually thought was going to happen, because actually, that's one of the best things about this magical universe that we live in, is that a lot of times it brings you, if you show the commitment, if you put in the energy, and you show up every single second of your life towards something great, it will bring you something greater. The amount of times when I received better things than what I had been able to imagine with my then limited perspective, it's just, I've been in awe of how the universe shows up when you're committed and when your energy is focused towards creating something extraordinary. And yeah, that's it for today. I mean, it's a lot to think about, and it's definitely one of the most transformational things you can do for yourself. Set that big goal. Finally, if you have it, have the guts to go after it. And I promise you, it is the best thing that you can ever do for your life. Thank you so much for watching and listening. If you haven't subscribed, don't forget to do that. I'm Sorana Pascariu, your host on Mindset for Mars, and I will catch you in the next episode. Bye, take care.